The cameras were already rolling when everything started falling apart, and no one, not even T.I. himself, was ready for how ugly it was about to get. What was supposed to be just another explosive reveal turned
I love you.
I love you too.
into something way deeper, something personal, something that cut straight into the heart of a father who suddenly realized the biggest threat to his legacy wasn't an outsider, wasn't the industry, but his own blood, King Harris. And the moment those words slipped out, "My son is my worst enemy," you could feel the entire room freeze, like time itself didn't know how to move forward after that kind of truth. T.I. had built his empire brick by brick, fight by fight, controversy by controversy. He survived the streets, the system, and the industry. He turned himself into a symbol of resilience, a man who stood tall no matter what came his way. But nothing in his past prepared him for this, being blindsided not by enemies, but by his own son. And what made it worse was the timing, because right when things were already shaky, 50 Cent stepped in and lit the match that would burn everything down. Now let's be real, 50 Cent doesn't just drop bombs randomly. He calculates, he waits, and when he strikes, it's surgical. So when rumors started circulating that he had footage, receipts, and inside information tied directly to King Harris, people knew this wasn't going to be just another social media moment. This was war. And T.I., whether he wanted it or not, was about to be dragged into it in the most humiliating way possible. The tension between T.I. and King Harris had been building for a long time. It wasn't something that just appeared overnight. There were signs, interviews, live streams, subtle jabs that hinted at a deeper disconnect. King Harris wasn't trying to follow in his father's footsteps. He was trying to step out of his shadow completely. But in doing that, he started aligning himself with the very energy that T.I. had spent years fighting against. And that's where everything started to spiral. Because once King Harris got caught up in the spotlight, it wasn't just about music or fame anymore. It became about attention, validation, and proving something to the world, to himself, and maybe even to his father. And that's exactly the kind of vulnerability that someone like 50 Cent knows how to exploit. He saw the cracks, and instead of ignoring them, he widened them. It all started with whispers, quiet at first, barely noticeable. People talking about private footage, leaked conversations, and a narrative that painted King Harris in a way that was impossible to ignore. Then those whispers turned into headlines. And those headlines turned into a full-blown storm that T.I. couldn't escape from, no matter how hard he tried to control the narrative. T.I. tried to keep things together publicly. He went on platforms, gave statements, tried to downplay the situation. But behind the scenes, everything was collapsing. The trust between him and King Harris was breaking apart piece by piece, and every new piece of information that surfaced only made things worse. It wasn't just about embarrassment anymore, it was about betrayal. And then came the moment that changed everything. 50 Cent dropped the clip. It wasn't just any clip. It was the kind of footage that doesn't just go viral, it sticks. The kind that people replay, analyze, and use as ammunition. And the worst part? It directly involved King Harris in a situation that made T.I. look powerless. For a man who built his reputation on control, authority, and respect, that was the ultimate humiliation. When T.I. saw it, you could tell something inside him snapped. Not anger, not at first. It was disappointment. The kind that runs deep, the kind that hurts more than anything else. Because this wasn't an enemy attacking him. This was his son putting him in a position where he had no defense. And that's when the tears came. Not for the cameras, not for sympathy, but because in that moment, T.I. realized he was losing something he couldn't replace. His relationship with King Harris wasn't just damaged, it was unraveling in front of the entire world. And no amount of fame, money, or influence could fix that. Meanwhile, 50 Cent was watching it all unfold like a chess player who had just executed a perfect move. He didn't need to say much. The footage spoke for itself. The reactions, the chaos, the emotional breakdown, it was all part of the impact. And whether people wanted to admit it or not, he had successfully turned a private family issue into a public spectacle. But here's where things get even more complicated. Because not everyone believes this happened by accident. There are people who think King Harris knew exactly what he was doing. That he wasn't just a victim of the situation, but an active participant in something bigger. That maybe, just maybe, he was trying to break free from his father's control in the most extreme way possible. And if that's true, then this isn't just a family conflict. It's a calculated rebellion. T.I., on the other hand, doesn't see it that way. To him, this is personal. This is his son making choices that not only hurt himself, but destroy everything the family has built. And the more he tries to understand it, the more it slips away from him. Because King Harris isn't backing down. Instead of apologizing or trying to fix things, he's leaning into the chaos. He's responding, reacting, and in some cases, escalating the situation even further. And every time he does, it feels like another blow to T.I., another reminder that the bond they once had is fading fast. And that brings us to the real question: how did it get this far? Was it the pressure of living under a legendary name? Was it the influence of the industry? Or was it something deeper, something that had been building for years beneath the surface? Because one thing is clear, this isn't just about one moment, one clip, or one leak. This is the result of a long chain of events that finally reached its breaking point. And now, with 50 Cent in the middle of it all, controlling the narrative and keeping the spotlight exactly where he wants it, there's no telling how far this situation is going to go. Because if this is just the beginning, then what comes next might be even worse. The fallout didn't slow down after that moment. It only got louder, messier, and way more dangerous for everyone involved, especially T.I. Because once the clip hit the internet, it wasn't just fans reacting anymore. It was bloggers, insiders, industry voices, all picking sides, all adding fuel to a fire that was already out of control. And right in the center of it stood King Harris, no longer just T.I.'s son, but now a headline of his own, whether he liked it or not. At first, people thought T.I. would respond with anger, that he would come out aggressively, shut everything down, maybe even go directly at 50 Cent the way he's done in the past when his name got dragged. But that didn't happen. Instead, what people saw was something they had never really seen before. A man who looked tired, emotionally drained, and completely caught off guard by how deep this situation had gone. And that silence? That hesitation? It spoke louder than any diss track ever could. Behind closed doors, things were reportedly even worse. Because this wasn't just about a viral moment anymore. This was about trust being shattered. T.I. had always been vocal about family, about loyalty, about standing together no matter what. But now, everything he stood for was being questioned, not by outsiders, but by the actions of his own son. And the more King Harris stayed active online, the more it felt like he wasn't trying to fix anything. He was trying to prove something. That's when the narrative started to shift. People began asking, why isn't King Harris backing down? Why isn't he showing any regret? And the answers weren't simple. Some said he was young, caught up in the attention, not fully understanding the consequences. Others believed something more serious, that he had been holding resentment for years, and now that he finally had a platform, he wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. And if that's true, then this situation didn't start with 50 Cent. He just exposed it. But don't get it twisted, 50 Cent wasn't done. If anything, he was just getting started. Because after the first drop shook the internet, he followed it up with subtle posts, cryptic captions, and carefully timed reactions that kept the conversation alive. He didn't need to say much. Just a few words here, a repost there, and suddenly the entire situation was trending again. That's the kind of control he has. He doesn't chase the moment, he extends it. And for T.I., that meant there was no escape. Every time he tried to move forward, something new would surface. A new angle, a new clip, a new rumor. And even when it wasn't directly coming from 50 Cent, the damage had already been done. The narrative was out there, and it was spreading faster than he could contain it. For someone who built his career on staying 10 steps ahead, this felt like being trapped in a situation where every move only made things worse. Meanwhile, King Harris was moving differently. Instead of stepping away from the spotlight, he leaned into it. Live sessions, indirect responses, moments where he looked almost unbothered by everything happening around him. And that's what made it even harder to watch. Because while T.I. was clearly hurting, clearly struggling with what was happening, his son seemed to be embracing the chaos in a way that didn't sit right with a lot of people. And that's when the public really started to divide. Some people defended King Harris, saying he had the right to live his own life, to make his own decisions, to not be controlled by his father's image. But others saw it differently. They saw disrespect. They saw a young man putting his family in a position where everything they built was being questioned for the sake of attention. And in the middle of all that noise, the real issue, the relationship between father and son, kept getting pushed further and further into the background. But make no mistake, it was still the core of everything. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't about 50 Cent. It wasn't about the internet. It wasn't even about the footage anymore. It was about a father who felt like he was losing his son in real time, and a son who felt like he had something to prove, no matter the cost. And then, things escalated again. There were reports, unconfirmed but spreading fast, that more content existed. More footage, more conversations, more things that hadn't been released yet. And the idea of that alone was enough to send shockwaves through the situation. Because if what had already come out was this damaging, what else could possibly be waiting? T.I. knew what that meant. It meant this wasn't over. Not even close. And for the first time, people started to see something they hadn't seen before. Not just pain, not just frustration, but fear. Not fear of the industry, not fear of public opinion, but fear of what might come next. Because when something like this gets out of control, there's no telling where it stops. And King Harris? He still wasn't backing down. If anything, he looked more determined than ever. Like whatever line had been crossed, there was no going back. And that's what made this situation so dangerous, because once both sides stopped trying to fix things, the only thing left is escalation. And with 50 Cent still watching, still posting, still subtly pulling strings from the sidelines, it was clear this story was far from over. By the time the situation reached control it, the image he spent decades building, the strong, calculated, untouchable figure, was cracking. And the pressure wasn't coming from rivals or the streets this time. It was coming from inside his own circle, from decisions he couldn't undo, and from a son who no longer seemed willing to play his position. And what made everything worse was how public it had all become. Every move, every reaction, every moment of silence. It was all being watched, dissected, and turned into content. Blogs were posting hourly updates. Reaction channels were breaking things down frame by frame. And social media was flooded with opinions that ranged from sympathy to straight-up mockery. For someone like T.I., who always knew how to command respect in a room, this level of exposure felt different. This wasn't respect, it was scrutiny. Meanwhile, King Harris was moving like someone who had already accepted the consequences. There was no hesitation in his tone anymore, no signs of stepping back. If anything, he seemed more comfortable in the chaos. Like he had finally stepped into a version of himself that didn't require approval. Not from his father, not from the public, not from anyone. And that shift? That's what made the situation feel irreversible. Because once someone stops caring about the fallout, there's nothing left to negotiate. Behind the scenes, people close to the family were reportedly trying to intervene. Quiet conversations, attempts to reconnect, efforts to bring things back to a place where they could at least talk without the world watching. But every attempt seemed to hit the same wall: pride, pain, and a growing distance that neither side knew how to close anymore. And the longer it went on, the more it started to feel like this wasn't just a phase. This was a breaking point. And right when it seemed like things couldn't get more intense, 50 Cent made another move. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was strategic. Reached out privately. Not for damage control, not for image, but for something real. A conversation. A chance to understand where things went wrong. A moment away from the cameras, away from the noise, where he could talk to his son not as a public figure, but as a father. And the response? Unclear. Some say King Harris ignored it. Others say the conversation happened but didn't go anywhere. And then there are those who believe it only made things worse. That whatever was said behind closed doors added even more tension to an already fragile situation. But one thing is certain. Nothing was fixed. And as the days passed, the silence between them started to feel louder than the drama itself. Because when two people stop communicating, especially after everything that's happened, it creates a space where anything can grow: misunderstanding, resentment, even more conflict. And with 50 Cent still hovering in the background, still unpredictable, still capable of dropping something at any moment, that space felt dangerous. Because now, it wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what was still coming. And if the pattern continued, if the tension kept building, if the distance kept growing, if the outside voices kept interfering, then this situation wasn't heading toward resolution. It was heading toward something final, something that couldn't be undone. Because at a certain point, damage stops being temporary and starts becoming permanent. At this stage, there was no more pretending things could quietly go back to normal, because everything had already gone too far, and T.I. could feel it slipping beyond his reach in a way he had never experienced before. The noise hadn't just grown. It had transformed into something uncontrollable, something that no statement, no interview, no strategic move could silence. And the worst part wasn't even the public pressure anymore. It was the realization that the distance between him and King Harris had reached a point where fixing it wasn't just difficult. It might not even be possible. Because now, it wasn't just tension. It was separation. Not the kind you fix with a phone call or a quick sit down, but the kind that builds when two people start seeing each other differently. T.I. no longer saw just his son. He saw someone making choices that directly challenged everything he stood for. And King Harris? He wasn't looking at his father as a guide anymore. It was about years of pressure, expectations, identity, and the weight of a name that comes with both privilege and responsibility. Growing up as the son of someone like T.I. means every move is compared, every mistake is amplified, and every success is measured against a standard that's almost impossible to reach. And at some point, that pressure either shapes you, or it pushes you to break away completely. And King Harris chose to break away. But the way it happened? That's what made it explosive. Because instead of a quiet separation, it became public, messy, and impossible to ignore. And once it reached that level, there was no protecting it anymore. No privacy, no space to heal, just constant exposure. For T.I., that meant watching something deeply personal turn into entertainment. Clips of his reactions, moments of frustration, even the emotion he tried to keep contained. All of it was being turned into content, replayed, analyzed, and judged by people who had no real connection to the situation. And that kind of exposure doesn't just hurt, it changes how you respond. It makes you more guarded, more calculated, but also more exhausted. And that exhaustion was starting to show. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that made headlines immediately, but in the small things, the pauses, the tone shifts, the way he chose his words more carefully than ever before. It was clear that this wasn't just another situation he could outmaneuver. This was something deeper, something heavier. And just when it seemed like things had reached their peak, there was another twist. Not a leak, not a clip, not even a direct move from 50 Cent, but a shift in energy. Because suddenly, the conversation started changing. Less about what had already happened, and more about what was coming next. People started asking questions that hadn't been asked before. What happens if this doesn't get resolved? What happens if the distance becomes permanent? What happens if this turns into something that can't be repaired at all? And those questions? They didn't have easy answers. Because for the first time, it felt like this wasn't just a phase or a moment that would pass. It felt like a turning point. The kind that defines relationships for years, maybe even permanently. And in that moment, everything slowed down. Not because the drama stopped, but because the weight of it finally settled in. For T.I., this wasn't about saving face anymore. It was about deciding what mattered more, his pride, his image, or whatever was left of his relationship with his son. And for King Harris, it was about whether proving his independence was worth the cost that was now becoming very real. Because the truth is, situations like this don't just disappear. They either get resolved, or they leave scars that never fully heal. And with everything that had already happened, with everything still hanging in the air, and with 50 Cent still somewhere in the background of it all, it was starting to feel like the next move wouldn't just shape the story. It would define the ending.